right.
Yeah. Got the right shoes. Yeah. Good afternoon. Welcome. Very nice to see so many of you here. As a geographer, I'm fascinated by the geography of where people choose to sit. But I'm going to not get too distracted by that. I am the Chief Education Advisor of TES.com, which is a business that nurtures teachers. And Angela, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Angela, that's it. Angela, that's all.
Okay. You'll find out more about the legends that is Angela Maiers later on. And I'm also a recovering politician. It's important that you know that. I'm a member of the House of Lords, which is why the Lord thing is at the beginning of my name, which means I'm a part-time legislator. I make law in my spare time, which is a great fun thing for me to do for the rest of my life. And where I wanted to start us was ISTE last year. How many of you were at ISTE last year? Hands up. In Denver, Colorado.
Yay!
A few?
My new home.
Your new home.
Yes, yes.
So I rocked up this time last year in Denver. And I'd gotten on the plane from London, where I live, less than 24 hours after my country had voted for this thing called Brexit. And I don't know how many of you know what Brexit is? Oh, some do, some don't. Okay. Well, our Prime Minister said Brexit means Brexit, which is really helpful. It means the UK leaving the European Union. And when I arrived here last year, far more teachers and educators wanted to talk to me about Brexit and why my country had voted to leave the European Union than they wanted to talk to me about anything to do with education, which was kind of surprising. But clearly, something was going on, and they were trying to work out what it was that was going on. So I did my best to explain it, and we might get into a bit of that a little bit later on, because I think it's part of something that's significant in the context of what we're talking about as the overall theme of mattering. Now, I was having these conversations about Brexit, and I had an invitation from a friend of mine, Adina Poper, who is someone who works for Loudoun County School District in Virginia. And she invited me to a breakfast, and I went along to the breakfast and sat next to this woman called Angela Maiers. And I'd heard of Angela Maiers. She had a big following on Twitter. I basically had a bit of Twitter envy. She had about 10 times as many followers as I did. And I'm a lord, it didn't seem right. And so I was interested to find out a little bit more about this Choose to Matter thing. And what I heard was all about empowerment, all about giving space for children's voices to be heard, listening to those voices, and allowing them to affect their change. And given that I'd just come off the plane and my country had just done something politically very surprising, this was interesting to me, because for me, my interpretation of what I was saying to everyone was the political surprise is that there was a bunch of people that people like me, politicians like me, had been ignoring for years, really, if we're honest, and they decided to have a voice, and they decided to use the ballot box for change, and they'd surprised us all.
Does that sound familiar in the United States?
I
won't get into that, yes?
Said to people, you never know, the same kind of thing might happen in your presidential election in November. And so this sense that there's swathes of the population that might be being ignored and that might be looking for a way of expressing their voice and their sense of frustration about things, that might have currency was a reason why I thought getting to know what Angela's doing, trying to understand it, was something worth exploring. So then when Angela got in touch and said to me, and incidentally, is it,
I wondered if it can move the slides.
So there are slides that go to this. And you'll see that's a Brexit slide, which basically says to you, the country was completely divided between people who were shouting angrily that they wanted to leave the European Union and people who were shouting angrily that they wanted to stay in Europe. For those that don't know what that blue flag is with the yellow stars, that's the European Union flag, and by some strange coincidence the Queen seemed to be wearing a hat made of the European flag last week when she opened Parliament, but I'm sure that wasn't deliberate. I allow myself to be distracted. So Angela and I met at breakfast, and we probably took a nice picture that we tweeted. And she then said she was going to be in London for a very similar event to ISTE called BET in January. And so I said, well, if you're going to be in London, let's see how your Choose to Matter stuff that is so great. Let's see whether that works in England. Let's see whether it works in some of the toughest Brexit schools, you know, in the communities that most strongly voted for Brexit around them, and see whether or not it works there. So I set up 2 school visits, and Smart set up a 3rd, and Angela tried it out, and she'll tell you a bit more about that before too long. So we tried it out. I got a sense of how well this thing can work, and you'll, as I say, you'll hear a bit more about the experience. But what was most powerful for me was that we were, the very first school we went to was in a school in a place called Medway in Kent. And it was a school at the wrong end of a selective schooling system that we have in some parts of England, I'm sorry to say. And this was a school where only boys who had failed an exam at the age of 10 or 11 were sent. So every one of those boys had already been told by the time that they were 11 that they were a failure, and that they were therefore being put into this sort of school that was for children like them. So I set a fairly hard challenge. And the other schools weren't easy either. But within 2 hours, Angela had done some kind of a magic with those kids, and it was very powerful. Now, the political certainty carries on. The political uncertainty. The certainty is it's uncertain. So I come here to ISTE now, and what's just happened in my country, you know, we've had all sorts of incidents going on in Manchester and London. But the very last thing that happened was this weekend we had the Glastonbury Festival in Somerset, out in rural Britain. And what was the weird thing that happened there? A politician aged 67 from North London, who just lost the general election, was greeted like a rock star by young people at the Glastonbury Festival, the biggest music festival in the world. And they're all chanting, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," in their best singing voices. And he spoke to these huge crowds. And the political surprises continue. Young people in our general election 2 weeks ago, or something crazy like that, turned out. In previous election, turnout amongst young people was about 45%. In this election, it was 20% higher. And they got motivated to turn out and make a difference. They got turnout, they now matter. They decided to matter. They chose to matter. And politicians will never ignore young people again. And that will change things for them, for education, for higher education. And it will shift the dynamic away from simply the politics appealing to those that turn out, the older population, to politics for everyone, which is very powerful. And it's a great way of thinking, well, I've arrived back in ISTE now. And I've had a year thinking about empowerment with Angela. And I've seen now the power of people deciding that they are going to matter and that people are going to listen and that it does make a difference. So that's what we want to talk about today. Before I hand over to Angela, there's just a question I want to ask you using the technology that we have. So you've all logged in, haven't you, into, what was the number? What was the address? How do you do it? classlab.com. 56433632 is the number. We have a growing number of you connecting, which is very gratifying.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And what this technology will allow you to do is to type in anything. I've no idea whether it filters out profanity, but type in anything and it'll just give us a sense of what the room feels. But what do you think is behind the political surprises in the US and Europe that's been going on since ISTE last year? So much has happened in that year.
We call this our Mattering app because every voice, because we can't sit face to face with you, we can't look face to face with you. So we want to hear what you're thinking, because what you believe is going to affect what your kids believe, what your community believes.
So far, insanity, frustration, uncertainty, people want change, hope. It's interesting. Dissatisfaction, need for love, and belonging. Oh, okay, it's all getting exciting then. Division. There's huge division in my country. But at the same time, after the Manchester attacks in particular, I don't know if you saw anything of the concert that happened in Manchester a couple of weeks later, but the sense of love and hope that there also was almost as encouraging as the events in Manchester were shocking and depressing and miserable.
And there's my cue, love and hope. Because we don't talk about those two things in education. They're sort of like, we talk about this and we talk about that, but let's talk about love. Let's talk about hope in the fullest sense of hope. I've had the privilege for 31 years and counting every day with blessing to be in the presence, in the embodiment of individuals who are love and who are hope. And it is through their eyes and through the lens in which they see their lives, in which they see the world, and most importantly, in which they see their place in creating that world. They embody and believe the foundation of what we embody and believe and choose to matter. A single sentence that is so profound and so provocative that most people over 5 ignore it. When I look them in the eye, trust me, I get right in their face. Heather, you are a genius, and the world needs your contribution. Cindy, you are a genius, and the world needs your contribution. Even if you try not to react, I see Cindy is bubbling up inside. And so whether the reaction is a quick smile that changes a mood, or a quick thought that crosses your mind for a second that, ooh, I liked being called that, I liked having that power, or an embodiment at the level that 5-year-olds believe this.
Angela, do even the people sitting on the side here have a genius?
Yes, they do, everybody. But imagine this room was filled with 5-year-olds, and I said that to them. You are a genius, and the world needs your contribution. How do they react? They're not happy, they're not excited. That's exactly what they expect you to believe. It is the expectation of their presence. They wake up understanding that genius isn't some anomaly. Average is. Genius is our birthright. It is the fuel and the fire of our ability to move forward any idea, thought, or action. And it is the essence of our resiliency. It is something that is within us and something that doesn't come from outside. And so 5-year-olds believe me. Now imagine if we filled this room, let's just go to 8-year-olds. Let's just go a few years older with first graders, second graders, third graders. If I look at them and say, you are a genius and the world needs your contribution, how many of them don't react? How many of them start the process of hesitation and hiding and holding back and doubting and all the things that were filled with this board at its full antithesis: uncertainty, despair, apathy, disengagement, disenlightenment, and every other aspect that is a result of a human, an individual, or an organization not believing that they matter, devaluing their significance and their purpose in the world. We have to turn that around. We, especially the individuals in this room, have the power to eradicate, not just reverse, but eradicate insignificance. The greatest peril that we face not just in education, but as Jim is explaining, in the world. Whether you look at it through the lens of economics or you look at it through the lens of education, the greatest thing that we face is our fear of insignificance. And what follows from that is everything from apathy to agony. So when Jim asked me to give a shout, or to give a chance at how do we even begin this process, we begin by getting ourselves back to who we were when we were 5. My favorite definition of genius is the ability to take the spirit and the force of childhood all the way through adulthood. So I look to Gracie. I look to individuals who wake up every morning and see it as their moral obligation to give full genius to the world and demand everyone else around them do the same. Mattering isn't something you stumble on. Mattering isn't an accident. It is a day-to-day, minute-by-minute, sometimes breath-by-breath choice. And when you wake up every morning and you believe that the world needs what you have and only you deliver, you are not just a different learner. You are a different human being. So getting people to cross the chasm into when they were 5 to who they are now is a strategic, scalable pathway back to a society with the spirit of a 5-year-old that wakes up every day, and that is where the arising is. They are leading it. These passionate, compassionate, powerful, amazing force of rising students, because they have the power of technology in their hands and at their breath to be able to accelerate that mission, that message that the world needs exactly what you have. Who you are right now matters. And so the process of doing that, the processing of giving us back or moving us toward our birthright is not, it's not rocket science, but it is neuroscience. So when Jim challenged me, how can you do this with kids you've never known? How can you do this? I thought I would be scared, but I'm not, because I have science on my side. This is not ideology. This is biology. The deepest human need beyond food, water, and shelter is the need to matter. It is essential to our life, to our learning, to our well-being, as food, water, shelter, and air. And when you provide it, it's like giving someone who hasn't had a drink a glass of water for the first time. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what their zip code is. It doesn't matter where they come from or what happened the minute before. We need food, water, shelter, air, and we need, not want, we need to know we matter. And this is just a message to them that they do. And the best way we can do that is invite them into being participants in the world. Not consumers, not leaders in waiting, not innovators in waiting, not anything in waiting. You don't have to wait a single second today or any day to use your genius to impact the world. And as soon as everyone figures that out, that the world was not created by people any smarter or better or richer than anyone sitting right next to you or in your seat, everything in the world changes.
I talked about my ISTE to ISTE year. Tell us
Absolutely.
about your ISTE to ISTE year.
So my year is very interesting too. I not only believe that mattering is about hope and healing, I believe that technology was created not to simply advance learning, but technology was created to advance humanity. And the best of humanity sits in this room and sits in our classes. And you position that with game-changing technology. It doesn't take very long for this movement and this message to scale. So I just want to share one story, because we're the embodiment of that story literally in this room. One of the most powerful forces was a year ago, right before ISTE, was I got a tweet in the middle of a conference, and I usually don't have that much time to respond till after the conference, but this tweet was from a group of kids. So of course I stopped everything, and they said, you know, we've had something happen in our school that shouldn't happen, and we believe we are the change. We wonder if we could Skype with you for 15 minutes. 20 kids in Mrs. Rodriguez's class in McAllen, Texas. And of course, a Skype that was 15 minutes lasted 3.5 hours, because I couldn't get away from these kids. And within 6 weeks, these 20 kids, under the leadership and the belief and the bravery of, I call her JWoww because she's a wow to me, because what she did was get out of their way. That's what she did. Get out of their way and let them be the leaders they were born to be. And in a matter of about 6 weeks, these kids not only changed their school, their classroom, they have reached every school in the entire county, reached the mayor, who later that year announced that the city would be the first city in the state of Texas to embrace mattering. The first city that chose to matter. And this went on weeks later, days later, months later, years later, and I got to go see them on the anniversary of the announcement of the first city that chooses to matter. And we happened to just take a little iPhone video. But everywhere I go, and everything I tweet, and everything I show, because I have a lot of people, I show this little 1-minute clip of these amazing 20 kids talking about their birthright, talking about their moral obligation to be the change that they see in the community, not to complain about the change, not to wish someone else would change it, but to be the change. And I show that to kids all over the world. And the McAllen kids ignited a group of kids in Canada who called and said, we have a genius that our community needs. Here's what's happening in our community, and grown-ups aren't fixing it. Very apologize, Lord. Legislators aren't fixing it. We must fix it. Can we talk to you about it? So 3-hour Skype session later, we have 148 kids in Calgary, in Niagara, and 400 kids in Saskatchewan. And then a call from kids in Italy, and kids in Spain, and kids in Australia, and kids all over the world that said they weren't motivated by the Lord, motivated by me, motivated by anything. They saw these 20 kids from McAllen being brave and said, my community needs us. Look at what these kids did in McAllen. So that tweet traveled to Niagara, where I met Smart, and then we traveled to Bet, where we worked with kids from London. We traveled to Italy. We traveled to Australia 2 weeks ago, and we have kids uniting around the world to heal the world and give the world hope. And all they're asking for us is to believe in them, to get out of their way and see them as leaders. Go ahead. Jim?
And so there's that strong sense from Angela around the possibility, the latent resource, if you like, of all of us, but especially young people, if they are given a sense that they matter, that they can provide hope and healing. And I would just then dwell for a moment on the awful events that we've had in my home city in the last couple of weeks with the fire at Grenfell Tower. I sat that week next to the chair of the Board of Governors of the school in the immediately adjacent to the tower. They'd lost pupils, they'd lost staff in that fire, and she just told me how angry everyone is. How angry they were that they'd not been listened to. That they'd been saying for some time that there were problems with the fire safety, that there were problems with where they were living, and they'd not been listened to. That in the end they didn't believe that the people like me, thought that they mattered enough to listen to them. And so I just reinforce my belief that this is profoundly important now. What happened at Grenfell, I think, will change politics in my country for some time. I think it's become iconic of something that we housed a bunch of refugees in that place. We housed some of the poorest, most vulnerable people, and it's a place that's cheek by jowl with some of the richest people in my country. And that gap, which geographically was nothing between the haves and the have-nots, and what then happens to the have-nots, is profoundly shaming for us as Brits. And we want to do something about it, and we will do something about it. But we will only do something about it if we can make everyone feel like they matter, and that means listening to them and empowering. So, we kind of want to think about this and sort of move it on a bit, having sort of depressed you a little by talking about the fire, and say, again, just tell us what age you think people lose. What do you think is the age when people like that lose their belief that they matter? Give us a few thoughts.
16. Wow, you're very hopeful people. This is why you're here.
Okay. This is quite a consistent sort of middle school age thing emerging here. Adolescents. Around the same time they turn up at school. So, what's your sense, Angela?
So the research that I've done for the last decade is I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because it used to be middle school. It used to be we started seeing that mattering gap begin around, as you said, 11, 12, 13. Now we have kids, and it isn't something that we need data for. You have to look at kids' eyes. Look at what Ben Zander calls their smiling eyes. When you were 5, you ran to school. You ran to school. You couldn't breathe. I ran here. I don't care. Jim got off a plane coming from Europe and literally maybe not ran, but close to ran, because this is a get to do. This is not, oh, I have to go to work today. Oh, I have to do this today. This is a get to do. I can hardly breathe every day that I get to do this work. Kids feel that at 5. And as early as 6.5 to 7, they start to doubt. They start to become uncertain. They start buying into the myth that genius is an anomaly, that changing the world and changing where your place is in the world is someone else's job or something for someone else who was luckier than they were. We start allowing ourselves to be powerless, even though we want to believe that other people make us powerless. The biggest enemy that we fight as individuals is insignificance. So it is our own enemy. It is our own fight with insignificance that is our greatest enemy. And the world just reinforces what we've already put inside of our heads, that we're just a kid, or this is what crushes me, we're just teachers, or we're just a principal of a school in a small town. You're not just anything. You are more powerful and more abundant and more available to make an impact in the world than any other human beings that I know.
And do they ever get it back?
So, not without help. It is very rare. Sir Ken Robinson speaks about people living in their element, the intersection between passion and purpose. Harvard did a phenomenal study that was the longest, most intensive longitudinal study that followed individuals in their path in life for 78 years and looked back at the number one regret or the number one worry or question. And across all demographics, across all economic strata, the question at the end of life that human beings ask is, did I matter? Did my time on this earth matter? Did I impact somebody? Did I develop deep relationships? Was I respected? Was I honored? Was I needed by other people?
So in essence, if our job as educators is to nurture young people so they can live fulfilling lives, the end of life, fulfillment, is did I matter?
Yes, absolutely. So that means that the only way this happens, unless you're a very lucky individual that has a mentor or somebody that intersected or even interrupted your life and said, you have a greater purpose than where you're headed right now, or the direction you're headed in isn't the place you need to be. Mattering must be our agenda. It is not an agenda. It is not one agenda of many. It's not an agenda that you adopt at the beginning of the year to make your kids feel better. It is not an agenda that we adopt as a theme for a conference or a theme for a school year. Mattering is not about making people feel better. Mattering is about making people step up to their greatest responsibility and greatest honor as human beings.
So we've been talking about these good people for half an hour.
I know it.
And they've been really good.
We shouldn't do that,
so
right?
They're great.
Yes, because they matter, right?
And we, yeah. And we've been talking about the problem.
Yes.
Should we think about solutions?
I think so. This is what keeps me up at night, and this is also what makes me jump out of bed in the morning. What does an organization, what does just at the classroom, what does it look like when mattering is the agenda? When our, what I call to-be list, who we wish and subscribe to be, our to-do list is in service of that and not the opposite way around. We have things backwards in schools. School is a to-do list. You do this and then you get to matter. You do this and then you get to be successful. You do this and if you do this and just finishing this and with the illusion that if you do that in order, in perfection, in fast sequence, that it will somehow at the end of that list come to a culmination of significance. Success is the enemy of significance. You choose either path. One is not a stepping stone. Just as Jim Collins said, good is the enemy of great. Good is not a stepping stone to great. It is its enemy. Because the path to significance starts every day with the to-be list. Who do we wish to be as learners, as leaders, as citizens? And then everything we do, every action, every intention, every thought, every breath is in service of becoming not just who we are now, but who we could be if we were that conscious.
So I'm interested in whether there's anything that people are already doing around learner voice, empowering young people, giving them the space to be heard and then acting on it. Has anyone got anything they want to share? We'll do this the manual way. You know.
Yes, absolutely. Can you stand up, honey?
Yes, ma'am.
I said honey, because I'm used to talking to kids. Like, can you stand up, honey? You are, honey. Stand up, yes.
Thank you. We've been toying with an idea since I got back. This past year, I've dealt with a lot of situations with individual students and so forth. However, it comes to it's at the epitome of every single situation. They matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what they did, but they matter.
Right.
So, in my brain, I started sharing some ideas. What if these incoming students that are coming in from the middle school to the high school, we get them together, invite the parents, create some kind of barbecue theme, brief them on what we're going to do, what I plan to do,
Yep.
what we want to do, but giving them the tools, giving them the support, because these are students who have 15 plus referrals, 20 plus referrals, yada yada, and so forth. But the idea here is, okay, let's flip it, and let's make them leaders of their own. You know, have them share experiences together, where they're in a situation where they have to create a solution. You know, let's step out of the way, so to speak, and let them create that solution. And we're hoping that this in turn will create some kind of hope for them that they didn't have before.
Absolutely. And that is the science. The deepest level of mattering, the deepest driver of human behavior is the need, not the desire, the need to feel needed by another person.
Any more? So these people need help.
Yes.
Mindset, I think that the work that's been done by Carol Dweck with Growth Mindset, that helping kids understand they're not stuck the way they are,
Absolutely.
that they can grow and change and become better.
Nurture the growth mindset in your class.
You know, I work at an education service center here in Texas, so we're doing presentations that teach about growth versus fixed. And I've just read a lot of research and resources that talk about, well, what are ways that we can promote that in the classroom? So the way we praise kids, different activities that we can do with kids to teach them that struggle is part of learning. That struggle is just what they should be feeling. So there's a lot of just individual strategies that we're teaching them. And then there's a great website called mindsetkit.org that parents can go and learn about the growth mindset, because that's what they always say in sessions is it's not just teachers that need to know this, it's the parents of those children. Right. Yeah. So mindsetkit.org is a great
incredible.
resource.
We're going to add that, which is a great lead-in.
Yes.
Inge.
We, after listening to Choose to Matter and the message a while back ago, we incorporated it in school. The first thing we did is we had Angela and the team come out
Where's your school?
In
Miami.
In Miami. Okay.
work with the teachers, and it was one of the most valuable things we've done because it was for them to understand. Okay, this is what we're trying to. The way you're feeling is the way
kids are feeling.
Yeah.
So we did that with the teachers, took them through all these different exercises, and where they asked, it matters to you. What matters to you? We've spread that message by incorporating about 8, 9, or 10 Choose to Matter days during the year,
Yeah.
where we really focus on the kids and saying, what matters to you, learning about themselves and how they see others. We even had the little ones, the 4-year-olds, staring at each other for about a minute, which was hilarious. But they were saying that they really noticed each other. So it is so valuable. And we started greeting the older children at the door, doing passion projects, and say, "You are a genius, and the world needs your contribution." At first, they were all like, "What are you saying?" Because they're really they don't expect it.
Sure.
No.
And when they hear it afterwards, we did reflections, and how many times it came up to them that was most valuable
Yes.
to them.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. Stefan?
I was just going to say, in our school district, 5 years ago at one of our schools, we piloted where changing the culture at the
Yes.
school.
Yes.
And we created core values. And what those or how we created those core values, bringing in students, bringing in parents, bringing in teachers, administrators, office staff, custodians, janitors,
Yes.
everyone to the table to create those core values. And in essence, what we were doing is that ensuring that everyone mattered at the school. So that everyone had that culture, that basically a culture of happiness. And then each year, since we get new students each year, we revisit those core values. Hey, are we addressing everything that we need to do? So really that culture of core values has been a tremendous help, and we've branched it to several schools now in our school district. So
Amazing. Jim, can I say something?
Yeah.
So what you have here, imagine if every one of you had a contribution. Some small thing, some large thing. This is what collective intelligence looks like. This is what collective impact looks like. So we've worked really hard in partnership with SMART, in partnership with Taz, to collect your voices. Because the answer to this question, the answer to eradicating insignificance, already exists in this room. It is within you. You know what to do. What we haven't done is curated all the things in your heart and all the things in your head. And put that together, a kit, I don't know what else to call it, a kit called Mattering is the agenda. It is the agenda. And whether it is adopting something like you're speaking about in McAllen, or something that you're doing in Miami, or something that you might have a spark in your head, hearing from another teacher, hearing from another school. And when you start looking at these thousands and thousands of contributions, what continues to just, I guess, take my breath away is how small these acts are. Inge, you said it, standing outside the door and saying kids' names as they walk in. Having a poster, which sounds so simple, a poster that says, "You are a genius and the world needs your contribution." I had a parent tweet a few days ago that, "I can't tell you, the brightest spot in my day was dropping off my high school child to a school where I know they will walk down the hallway every day and walk through the corridor and see that reminder of why they are here and why they exist." So, Jim?
Oh, no, I'm back again. Joe.
Well, I just wanted to add to some of the things that was already mentioned. We actually created a program of fraternity, and we call it Gamma Lambda, and it's in Sci-Fair ISD here in Houston. And the organization pretty much implements core values, integrity, different things of that nature, but it was an outreach program in the community. Because one thing I learned when I was an undergrad in business schools, that most Ivy League schools, the community surrounds the school. The professors live around the campus within a 5 to 10 mile radius. So I took that action and moved, even though it's a Title I school. I'm not going to say that I wanted to move to the worst housing community ever, but I moved into an area where I could get to the community and make myself noticeable. Where a lot of teachers may live in certain areas. They want to live where they don't see the student every day, for example, in the summertime, etc. Well, they need to see me.
They do.
And so they need to see me through, you know, if I'm out socially or if I'm just out, they need to see that I'm human.
They
So
want to
I
know,
can-
exactly, they want to know you
Yeah.
before what you know.
So
They
that
care about
created
you.
A closer rapport. It created more retention, classroom management increased. And we're in a building process where we want our faculty and staff to become a lot more effective, not just on individual group scores or that department, the whole school. And so we're trying to bring that disparity into one, and that organization, Lambda Gamma, is something that I believe is
Amazing. So here is my challenge to you and everyone in the room. Everything you might be hearing seems common sense. The leadership challenge of our decade, of our humanity, is turning common sense into common practice and commonplace. Because as all of this makes sense, it takes absolute, focused, fierce leadership to turn that common sense into commonplace and common practice. And we do that by building on our strengths. And so we have collected and curated and listened and heard and learned from you every day that I'm in the field, every day that I'm online, listening to your common sense, to your common knowledge, and putting it in one place, putting it in our community, and whatever that community is, getting you to that. And so we have created a research and a resource hub that is in partnership with Choose to Matter, SMART, and TES, and we have two component parts of it. We have the research and the systems for culture level change, for speaking to parents, speaking to community members. But as I imagine also sitting as a classroom teacher in front of first graders with 26-year-olds looking at you, they could care less about the research. So there's also the second side of it, which are the practical lessons, the lessons we did in the UK, the lessons we did in
it's worth,
all over.
it's worth me saying,
Oh my gosh,
Angela, just when I first, reminding you, when I first met Angela at ISTE last year in Denver, I was massively skeptical. I thought, this is just some evangelical, you know,
with very cute shoes.
I won't say American nut job because that just sounds wrong. But you know, someone who really had drunk the Kool-Aid and believed in herself massively. Was this really going to work in my country? Was it really going to work with the kids that it really needs to work for? And 2 hours was what it took to get kids in a school where they've been labelled failures crying on our shoulder about whether or not they mattered. Crying because they had held back from saying that they had a genius.
And they promised they would never do that again, ever.
And for me, yeah, there's a lot of power in Angela as an individual. And obviously she delivers this with total commitment. But I believe that anybody else,
absolutely,
as an educator, with total commitment and with the advice that we're getting from others and from Angela through the resources, makes this really possible that in just a 2-hour lesson you can start to move the dial. But then, you know, we've heard these examples from around the room of things that people are doing. What we then need to do is to look at how we can connect those people, connect those children, so that they feel like they can not only define the world that needs their contribution as their school, they can define the world as their family, as their community, as the tower block they live in, but they could also define it as the world, because they can be connected.
Absolutely. We have one more exciting announcement. Before that, go to MQ. So I'm here today to not announce something that we've completed, but to invite you to be a part of the journey with us. As I've been traveling the world and listening to students, listening to teachers, listening to community members, listening to as many people in the world as possible about what they need to heal and what is required for hope, I started really thinking about that Harvard study where we're looking and talking to 80-year-olds that look back on their life, most of them with regret, wondering, literally wondering without an answer, did I matter? And I wanted to flip that, as you say. What if we didn't have to wonder? What if hope and healing could be quantified? What if our journey toward purposefulness and journey toward significance could literally be operationalized? If we took the attributes of mattering and we put them in a formula, something that could be measured, something that could be marked, and we presented that number, if you will, to students beginning at the highest level of their MQ or mattering quotient, and gave them the responsibility of what I believe is keeping this A. You don't have to earn your way to the world. You get an A by showing up. Your job is to keep it. So at the highest level, whether it's a scale of 10 or a scale of 100 or whatever the mathematics works out, let's say 10, your mattering quotient at 5 for every 5-year-old that exists is 100 on a scale of 10. What if our life's mission was to keep that number, to hold it in front of us, to guide us, to move the path, to help us frame decisions that we make, whether they are driven by outside forces to be successful in others' eyes, or they come from the power and abundance that lives inside of us? What if we could quantify mattering? And I'm really, really honored and proud to say that we've begun in partnership with a group of researchers at Denver University to begin that journey. And as we are moving to the next phase of the research and looking at what the implications and what the impact of a mattering quotient could be for our youngest learners all the way to our entire systems, we want your insight. We want your contribution. This is our research. We are the purveyors of hope and the providers of healing, not just to our children, but to the world. And so Lord Jim and I will be at the SMART booth to talk to you with one of the researchers here, to talk to you about what does it look like? Do you want to be a part of this? Please, I'm imploring you to be a part of this. And whether we decide it's a scale of 10 or a scale of 100 or an index or whatever there is, we're talking about it. We are making it our collective agenda. And for that, I'm awestruck.
Albert wants to say something.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. When you said about the angelical part, you were like, okay, we're going to come do it at our campus, right? You think about that as a building level principal, right? We have like 2,300 kids at our school. But it's true, it works. It really does work. You know, when you have your valedictorian speak, and then we have our SACS accreditation. Who's had a SACS accreditation visit here? Or your accreditation for your credentials? And your student speaks, who's not a part of the Choose to Matter ambassador team that we have about our students, says, you know what, we believe that Choose to Matter helped our kids go through stuff. You know, we have clicks here and there, but we're not really cliquish. You know what I'm saying? You know, she was trying to explain that to the accreditation for the team, and we were like, yeah, we understand what, you know, there's clicks here and there, but we still all get along as one big campus. You know, this past year we had a couple of students who passed away, one very tragically and one just very suddenly. And we feel that, and we know that within our hearts, that this Choose to Matter did help us heal and become strong as a whole entire campus. So we do things for kids all the time, you know, just simple as hot chocolate coming in right after the holidays, and then we give them Choose to Matter labels. We, you know, make them with label makers. It's not very expensive, right? It's
in the mattering kit.
It's not very, in the mattering kit. Not very expensive, and then we just, Angela came by and our crew came in, and we just put stickers along with all the administrators, teachers, and we gave kids stickers, and they're like, why am I getting that? You're like, you're a genius. And they're like, huh? You know, they kind of give you that.
And they act like they don't care, and then they go around the corner.
Yeah, they act like they don't care, and they're like, what did you get? What did you get? So they're looking for stickers, and they're trying to get other people to get stickers for them and stuff. So it does help out, and it does matter that we are the adults and telling kids that they're genius, and they do have a contribution, and they can make a difference, and our teachers here can make a difference, and our admin can make a difference. So, you know, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.
And reformation costs us billions, costs us trillions. Transformation is almost always free and almost always permanent.
So,
and
we should not forget that in the end, what we're talking about is children, and you know, Angela and I in London. That's the one.
Yeah.
Fairly impromptu gathering with kids who Angela had been to see in the school, which incidentally is in walking distance of that tower I showed you a picture of earlier. And they wanted to connect to Macallan. They're keen to collectively think about problems that they want to be a part of solving and to understand how they can make their own contribution. but we're very conscious that you're leaders of those young people.
Yes.
And so the last thing, I think it's the last thing.
Before you do your last thing, I just want to add their voice, because that is a voice that we haven't shared. And I'll just share that. Can we show that picture again? And we simply ask them, how do you let the world know how kids matter? Because we believe you matter. I think your teachers believe you matter. Why do you matter to the world? And this is completely impromptu. We're literally sitting on the floor. We hand them the mic, and with absolute conviction, this is what the circle said. Kids matter to the world because we bring to the world faith. We bring to the world hope. We bring to the world laughter. We bring to the world resilience. We don't give up on problems. We will sit and find a million ways and persevere, and we will be passionate about it because we believe we are the change makers. We bring enlightenment. We bring love. We bring our full selves. Because if grown-ups did that, the world would be absolutely different. And that's what I want you to think about for the rest of the time. Do you bring your full self to the work? Do you bring your full self to the world? No hiding, no hesitation, no holding back. You are exactly what the people in your world need for hope and for healing. And you do not do anyone service by playing small and hiding or holding everything that is great within you.
So the last thing we want you to do as the leaders of young people is just tell us what the first thing you're going to do about this is.
Because we know you're going to choose to matter. Like, we don't have to ask you that. Yeah. We know that.
You matter. The world needs your contribution because of your leadership of young people, and we'd like to know what action you're going to make as part of that contribution. The first thing, because obviously there'll be many things, because you've now drunk the Kool-Aid, and you now get it. So find the tennis resources is obviously a lovely answer. But put up there what you think you're going to do, because we don't want you just to come to a session and that's it, that was fun and we'll see you next year. And greeting someone with a smile might be all you need to do. But do that and think about how you're going to lead those young people back in classrooms. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you very much. Angela, thank you to Catherine and others from SMART for working with us and helping with us do all of this. And any of you who want to follow up with us, we'll be hanging around afterwards. We'll be on the SMART booth, and we can carry on the conversation.
We can talk MQ. I'm so excited. Never been so excited about math in my whole life.
But thank you all very much, and keep in touch. Thank you.
Yes.